Do you have any thoughts on your colleague Robert Jenrick's and Neil O'Brien's report recently that sort of put to bed the argument that immigration is an unmitigated economic good?
Well, I do agree with that. And in fact, the Growth Commission also produced a report showing that immigration reduces GDP per capita. So it makes people in Britain poorer if you have very high levels of immigration. Now, I support some high skilled immigration. In fact, when I was Trade Secretary, I negotiated trade deals with Japan and Australia to do just that, things like business visas. But the scale we have, combined with our very poor planning system, means that it has contributed to things like house price rises, increased rental costs. And people can just see that. They can see it's really hard to get a doctor's appointment. They can see that they're not able to get a house. They're not able to rent at a reasonable rate. And immigration is part of that problem. And they're absolutely right to point that out.
Yeah, this is the thing I don't understand, again, as someone that's not walking the halls of Westminster, why the Conservative base is
The
so
halls of
out of
Whitehall,
lockstep.
by the way, all this stuff goes on in Whitehall. It doesn't go on in Westminster. That's part of the problem. The power has been taken away from Parliament and is now being decided in departments and by quangos.
True. I mean, in 2022, the Telegraph was reporting that as soon as your successor was installed, he was advised immediately to put immigration up to boost the economy rather than cut taxes. And again, I think we both agree that's economically unsound. But I hear a lot of rhetoric from some of your colleagues about reducing immigration and making good on their promises. But it seems to stop short of actually enacting it, or at least like doing the political will to get those people out of Whitehall. We often talk about the blob, but we don't talk about who's exactly blocking it, and why we don't hire new people that are on board with the Conservative
So
agenda.
one example is the Office of Budget Responsibility. They believe, and I had this discussion directly with them, that if you put up immigration, you create new opportunities to either increase public spending or cut taxes. So they believe there is a fiscal benefit to increased immigration. And what essentially the Office of Budget Responsibility says to the Chancellor is, you have a choice, Chancellor. Put up immigration by 100,000 a year or raise taxes. That's your choice.
Right. So they wheel in the
And
pie charts and
and
strong arm
just
them.
to so the Office of Budget Responsibility, that person, the head of the Office of Budget Responsibility, is appointed by the Chancellor, but the appointment process is so labyrinthine that the civil service are very good at gaming it to get the type of candidate they want. Because a lot of people say, well, why don't you just appoint better people to these bodies? First of all, people on the left are much more willing to spend their time working in government. And secondly, the system is very, very good at weeding out, uh, right-wing candidates. So I had a major battle to get Kishore Faulkner as head of the ECHR, or EHRC, sorry. I had a major battle to get Tony Abbott in the trade board, and to get Catherine Birbalsingh as the social mobility czar. It's really difficult if you want to get somebody, because the way the civil service code, the way the appointment system works, it is very, very difficult. And these are other things that we will have to change if we are to succeed. But why does the OBR exist in the first place? It should be the Chancellor making decisions about the government's fiscal policy, not some unelected body which is run by somebody who used to work at the Resolution Foundation, which is an Ed Milibandi think tank. So
Right.
that's just one example of what's going on in the system. Another, why don't we deport illegal immigrants? Well, the answer is that they are winning asylum cases. Why is that? Well, first of all, we've got the Human Rights Act, which human rightsified British law. And then we've also got a judicial system which has become increasingly divorced from parliamentary sovereignty. So who is choosing the senior judges? Well, it's not the Lord Chancellor anymore. It's another quango. And that quango is pointed in exactly the same way that I've just talked about, the way the OBR was appointed. So what has been created is a labyrinthine, left-leaning, unelected, unaccountable state apparatus. That is what we are dealing with. And I've seen it in every government department I worked at. I saw it with the Environment Agency at DEFRA. I saw it with the Judicial Appointments Commission in Justice. I saw it in the way the foreign aid budget worked at the Foreign Office, and the Treasury is the icing on the cake with the Bank of England, the OBR, and the Treasury officials themselves. That's the problem.
So I remember because ahead of Party Conference 2022, I remember the Guardian reporting with seeming glee that you were being advised to raise immigration to raise GDP. Was that essentially people trying to whisper in your ear and say keep the status quo going? Were you battling that behind the scenes?
They weren't whispering in my ear. They were saying we will this was the ABR. We will publish a forecast of what your plans will deliver. And if you don't increase immigration, our forecast will be worse. And therefore, you won't be able to cut taxes, or you'll have to cut public spending.
Right. So an exercise in reputation
destruction. They were saying it directly.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go. Maybe I was giving them far too much credit. Something when you say about sort of inability to deport illegal immigrants, there's something that I am genuinely quite worried about. Is in the next couple of years, I'm trying to get a house with my girlfriend, soon to be fiance, want to have kids, do the right thing, hopefully. A debate last week, I think it was last Monday, was very well attended by politicians of pretty much all parties. I believe there's one Conservative minister there in agreement with it, that were pushing for a Palestinian refugee scheme akin to the Ukrainian refugee scheme. And obviously with Ukraine, we saw about 200,000 people come in. Very different attitude towards Britain in Ukraine versus Palestine, who still hold a grudge with Britain's role in the creation of the State of Israel. My worry is that, this happens after the Labour shadow minister, if he, God forbid, becomes the immigration minister, has said they're already drafting plans. If they implement this as of next year, what do we do when we've got hundreds of thousands of people who have a very hostile view towards Britain in Britain? Are we going to have the means of sorting that out if there was a Conservative government 5 years after?
We shouldn't let it happen, Connor, is the answer. We shouldn't let it happen. And the problem is the Labour Party is in hock to very left-wing activists who are pro-Hamas. They're pro-terrorist, they're anti-Semitic, they're anti-Israel, and that is who they are worried about. And you can see some of their voters are shifting to the Green Party. And we had that, terrible Green councillor elected in Leeds who is, representing those types of views. So that is the fundamental problem here, that there is a strand of thinking in Britain that is actively against our country, pro-terrorist, and is influential within the Labour Party. And the only thing we can do about that is to get right-thinking people in Britain to protest. Because the left are very good at protests. And those protests are being funded by major donors. They're being funded, I believe, by authoritarian regimes as well, who want to see our society destroyed. But we have to fight back. And that is why we've set up Popular Conservatism, which people can reach on www.popularconservatism.com, is to galvanize people who don't agree with this stuff. Because that is ultimately the only way we are going to succeed in taking on what is now a very virulent group of left-wing activists. And you can see the fact that Greta Thunberg has moved from, being an eco-extremist to now being a terrorist sympathizer, that these are the same people. It's the same people who are behind the Black Lives Matter movement. Right-thinking people in Britain do have to get involved in politics and stand up to this. Because I believe the vast majority of people in Britain don't want our country going in this direction at all. If I talk to people on the doorstep about the idea of having a scheme to allow in terrorist sympathizers, they'd be absolutely horrified. But it does require us on the right of politics to fight back. And as I've said, it's painful to fight back because it's not what the liberal media want to hear. It's not what the corporate sector want to hear. They want to bury their heads in the sand and carry on making their money and not have to worry about this stuff and not have to get involved in this. But people are going to have to get involved.
Yeah, so I suppose my worry is that
stop worrying and start doing, Connor. That's
yeah,
what
well, I'm attempting, but so let's put it this way. I am concerned that not everyone on the front bench is as receptive as you are. The polls haven't recovered since Boris was out, and then I think you probably the best person to be able to right the ship. But as of yet, things are looking bleak. Let's say that 5 years of Labour causes this to happen. Will a Conservative Party that returns have your revolutionary energy and says these people are actively against Britain and so their stay cannot be indefinite? Or will they essentially go the route of Michael Gove, who embraced Greta Thunberg, for example, and is a bit softer? I'm worried that a Conservative Party that comes back after a Labour government won't deal with it.
This is a battle not just within the Conservative Party, but also within Britain, of a group of people who want to appease what are extremists. These people are extremists. They want to see all fossil fuels banned while China's busy building coal-fired power stations. They want to see terrorism or terrorist groups welcome to the United Kingdom. They want to totally deny the whole concept of biological sex. These people are extremists. And what is happening at the moment is people who don't agree with that, who do believe in the values and way of life in Britain, are being bullied and silenced into not saying that. And look at Wes Streeting's appalling tweet about Susan Hall, our London mayoral candidate, describing her as a white supremacist. These are the kind of bad names that people will get called. And what I'm saying is enough people who believe in our country and value our way of life have to be prepared to take flack. I'm prepared to take flack. I've taken flack. I will carry on taking flack because I believe in this and I don't want to see our country go down the drain. And what we have to do is we have to recruit more people. We have to recruit more people, and those people have to be more vocal, and they have to take on the leftist institutions. For example, our universities. We should not be funding universities who allow this kind of thing to take place on their campuses, like Jewish students being unable to go to lectures. We shouldn't allow that. We shouldn't, state organizations should not be funding charities that are undermining our way of life. But it is tough, it is tough to change those things. And one of the messages in my book is we actually have to go back to the laws that established this way of operating that is such a problem for our country. We've actually got to repeal those laws. And Parliament needs to get serious about what it spends its time doing. And look at why is it that the governance of Britain isn't working, and what do we need to do to change it? And one of the reasons I wrote my book, 10 Years to Save the West, is to try and explain to people what it's actually like being in government and how things are not working.
Thank you for watching that clip from Tomlinson Talks. If you liked that and you would like to see more, you can get the full 90-minute show every week on a Wednesday afternoon, live from 3 p.m, only on lotuseaters.com, and all of the other content that my colleagues produce behind the paywall for as little as £5 a month. Thank you very much for supporting us, and I hope to see you there. Until next time, goodbye.